On May 10th, Trump announced that after a long night of negotiations, India and Pakistan had agreed to a full ceasefire. It seemed like an escalating South Asian war was stopped by Trump's signature negotiation skills, without a single soldier being sent to the front lines. The two feuding neighbors reached an agreement, and the world's media went into overdrive. Stock markets surged, and it felt like Trump saved the world once again. However, just a few hours after the ceasefire announcement, Pakistan, as China's close ally, launched drones at India, heavily targeting border positions. This tore up the agreement and threw the newly achieved peace right out the window. What's even more interesting is that while Trump said that U.S.-China trade talks in Switzerland were going well, China's Xinhua news agency released a statement saying that China will never sacrifice its principles to reach an agreement with the U.S. Trump didn't back down, and neither did China. Both sides were playing their cards behind the scenes. This wasn't a mistake, an accident, or a misfire. It was clearly sabotage. From the beginning of the India-Pakistan crisis, China has been the one stirring up instability. The U.S. has been pushing companies to relocate their supply chains outside of China, and India is seen as the biggest beneficiary. In recent years, foreign companies like Foxconn, Apple, Tesla, and Google have been flocking to India. What manufacturers fear most is instability, uncertainty, and war. And the CCP specialty is creating instability. How do you make the world question India's ability to take over manufacturing? It's simple. Start a war. News headlines filled with border skirmishes, missile attacks, and nuclear war threats would naturally make foreign investors rethink whether to move factories out of China and into India. This isn't the first time that China has done this. It just chose to have someone else do the dirty work while staying behind the scenes, and that someone else is its close ally, Pakistan. China and Pakistan are deeply tied, and China is no longer a third party in this matter. Military sales, satellites, missiles, oil routes, ports. China has a hand in everything, along with billions of dollars in infrastructure loans to Pakistan. Recently, Pakistan even asked China to increase the currency swap limit between their countries. Currently, the currency swap limit is 30 billion yuan, but Pakistan wants it raised to 40 billion yuan and aims to push for more use of the yuan in international trade. In short, whether Pakistan takes action depends on China's approval. How far it goes also depends on Beijing. That's why, when Trump helped broker peace, Beijing immediately turned its back and let its ally open fire. After the Indian Air Force's Sindh airstrike on May 7th, Pakistan's foreign minister proudly announced that they used China's J-10C fighter jets to shoot down 5 Indian planes. China's state-run media immediately followed up with intense propaganda, claiming domestic weapons have achieved world-class standards. Stock markets surged, public opinion exploded, and wolf warriors were excited, as if the Chinese military had already stormed New Delhi. But the reality was far more brutal. In this conflict, all 4 of Pakistan's Chinese-made PL-15 long-range air-to-air missiles failed to detonate and fell into Indian territory, almost undamaged. The Indian military quickly seized them and sent them to the lab, where they're now being dissected, layer by layer, to examine the radar guidance, data links, and terminal algorithms that China takes pride in. The Chinese military's so-called advanced technology is now being laid bare for the enemy to study. Back in the Cold War, a U.S. AIM-9 Sidewinder missile was mistakenly fired over the Taiwan Strait and fell to the ground. The Chinese military collected it and handed it over to the Soviet Union, which ultimately led to the creation of the K-13 missile. Now the tables have turned, and it's China turning its prized military products into free teaching samples. What's even more absurd is that it wasn't just the PL-15 missiles that failed. Several other missiles malfunctioned or missed their targets. According to Pakistani military data, both sides flew about 125 stories in this round of conflict, with Pakistan firing dozens of air-to-air missiles. Only 5 hit their targets, giving a hit rate of under 8%. Another version is even harsher. Pakistan fired just 9 missiles, of which 5 hit and the other 4 were duds. China has long touted indigenous development and performance leadership, but now all of this is exposed under the enemy's microscope. China's meticulously crafted narrative has now crashed on the battlefield. The biggest problem with the Indian Air Force is its international system of equipment. With French Rafales, Russian Su-30s, and MiG-29s, different models cannot integrate data links, severely limiting operational coordination. On top of that, they haven't received U.S. military GPS systems, which gives them an inherent disadvantage in navigation and guidance. Their most advanced weapon, the Meteor air-to-air missile, comes from France. It's uncertain whether it's the latest version, and it's in limited quality with slow deliveries. The rest are mostly older Soviet-era missiles. The Pakistani Air Force, on the other hand, possesses a large number of AIM-120 and AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles from the US, as well as PL-15 missiles provided by China. Previously, Pakistan had used AIM-120s, AIM-9s, and AIM-7s to shoot down several Indian Su-30s and other Russian-made aircraft. Additionally, Pakistan has access to Chinese weapons and data systems, which can be directly connected to Chinese satellites for support. But the theoretical advantage did not translate into real combat effectiveness. Instead, missiles failed to detonate, the hit rate was low, and electronic warfare interference was ineffective, exposing deep quality issues within China's military-industrial system. In terms of overall military strength, India's advantages are even more evident. In the air, India leads far ahead in air-to-ground strike capabilities, long-range surface-to-surface missiles, and air defense interception systems. In naval power, India already has 2 aircraft carrier battle groups, while Pakistan has almost no naval dominance. In terms of army equipment, India's total number of tanks and armored vehicles far surpasses Pakistan's. Recently, India signed an agreement with Israel for LoRa air-to-air ballistic missiles. These missiles have a maximum range of 400 kilometers, supersonic speeds, and both ground and naval launch capabilities. Once active service, India will be able to launch precise strikes on Pakistan's deep targets, far beyond the reach of Pakistani aircraft, drastically limiting Pakistan's strategic response options. On the early morning of May 8th, Pakistan took the first step by using drones and missiles to attack multiple military targets in northern and western India. India quickly retaliated on the morning of May 8th, launching large-scale strikes on Pakistan's air defense radars and missile positions, including the Chinese-made Hongqi-9B system, which was confirmed to be destroyed. On the morning of May 9th, India once again launched missiles and drone strikes on targets such as Jammu, Pathankot, and Udhampur. After Pakistan returned fire, the Indian Navy initiated a strike program in the Arabian Sea, with reports of 2 aircraft carrier battle groups participating in the operation. At 2:20 a.m. on May 10th, Xinhua's reporters in Islamabad and Rawalpindi heard a series of explosions, and the Pakistani military confirmed that Indian missiles had indeed targeted the Nur Khan airbase. This series of exchanges indicates that the conflict has spread nationwide, with air raids, air defense, and naval strikes all fully underway. What surprised India's intelligence agencies the most was the discovery that followed. According to multiple intelligence analyses, it was suspected that a large proportion of the personnel involved in the J-10C fighter mission, those controlling the air defense systems, and even some of the drone operators, were likely active-duty Chinese military personnel. This model had previously appeared in battlefields in Syria, Africa, and even Yemen, but this time it appeared in the South Asian theater, on the edge of the China-India confrontation zone, with a completely different significance. China is no longer just the financier behind the scenes, it has become the main player on the battlefield. However, despite such deep involvement, the battlefield momentum was still gradually being suppressed by India. According to the battle damage data, Pakistan experienced significantly heavier casualties and equipment losses. India not only gained air superiority, but also dominated in electronic warfare and guidance interference. China's full-fledged show of strength, with money, technology, and manpower, failed to suppress India. Instead, it turned into a tactical defeat. Many are asking, why is China pushing so hard? Knowing full well that the weapons could fail, and knowing that the opponent would retaliate, why still support Pakistan to confront India head-on? The answer is simple: because China can't afford to lose. Currently, over 80% of China's oil exports must pass through the maritime chokehold. If a conflict breaks out between China and the U.S. military could easily cut off its supply chain with just a few ships. The problem is referred to as the Malacca Dilemma, and is considered the top strategic nightmare for the highest levels of government. That's why, for the past decade, China has been building pipelines in Central Asia, building docks in Myanmar, and dredging islands in the South China Sea. But the most ambitious project is still the India-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Starting from the Persian Gulf, oil is delivered to the southern Pakistani port of Gwadar, then transported by land and pipeline, crossing Pakistani-controlled Kashmir to reach China's Xinjiang. Once this route is opened, China could bypass the Malacca Strait and establish a land lifeline. The problem is, this vital artery is blocked in Kashmir. Geographically, China and Pakistan do not have a direct economic corridor. The only viable path is through the disputed India-Pakistan region, Kashmir. This is why India has always strongly opposed the China-Pakistan corridor, considering it an infringement of sovereignty. Meanwhile, China has tried to disguise its support, but has consistently allowed and supported Pakistan in strengthening its control over Kashmir. Simply put, this is not only India's pain point, but also a critical area for China. Right now, two things seem to be unfolding. On one side, the China-Pakistan economic corridor remains incomplete, and the oil pipeline is blocked. On the other side, a sudden report emerged that Kashmir has confirmed oil reserves of 9.1 billion barrels. Pakistan has external debt reaching $130 billion, foreign trade exchange reserves under $5 billion, and an electricity supply on the verge of collapse. China quickly seized the opportunity and presented a tempting offer. If Pakistan takes Kashmir, China will help it develop oil, clear debts, and turn Pakistan into an energy exporter. This is a typical tactic used by China, using false economic prospects to lock a vulnerable country into a strategic choice. Just like Sri Lanka, Venezuela, Djibouti, and Zimbabwe, each of them was bound to China in this way. And clearly, Pakistan is China's most valued strategic pawn this time. What is China's motivation in intervening in the India-Pakistan conflict? Anti-terrorism, national unity, or to support its Muslim brothers? None of the above. China wants oil, it wants access to the Indian Ocean, it wants energy security, and it wants an energy lifeline that's not controlled by the US military. Kashmir is the final mile on that path. As long as this mile remains unstable, the entire corridor will forever remain a fantasy. Since the outbreak of this conflict, India has done three things. First, it has mobilized the Army, Navy, and Air Force for full-scale combat drills, quickly building up war readiness. Second, it has continued to push for upgrades and transformation in its defense industry, accelerating negotiations for F-15EX fighters, Meteor missile systems, and even F-35s. Third, it has gradually shifted its strategic focus from the Western Front to the Eastern Front. And as for what China calls South Tibet, India's government understands well that the Pakistan-India conflict is just a strategic rehearsal. The real future battlegrounds are in the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, and the core areas of the Indo-Pacific defense line. This conflict has provided India with a window to practice, plan, and showcase its military confidence. It also lets the world see that India may soon replace China on the world stage. Meanwhile, Pakistan is also standing at a pivotal point of historical transformation. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's government is not led by a populist leader who rose to power with religious slogans. His administration's goals were to eliminate extremist forces, push privatization reforms, attract foreign investment, and enhance the rule of law and transparency. These measures could have helped this 240 million-strong nation become South Asia's second dark horse, but this war has been a stumbling block to all those efforts. China does not want Pakistan to succeed in its reforms. It wants a controllable, chaotic ally that is always dependent on Beijing's military-industrial complex and loans, rather than a democratic country with the rule of law, aligned with the world, and even possibly pro-American. Once the war broke out, internal reforms came to a halt, opposition groups gained traction, and religious forces stirred. The modern state prototype that Sharif had worked on for years was almost completely destroyed. You might think that this is war causing the interruption of reforms, but actually it's the reformed that threatened external powers' interests, which had to be interrupted by war. From the Arab Spring to Lebanon, from Iran to Ukraine, every time a country seeks to break free from authoritarian control, a sudden conflict arises. The script is all too familiar. But this time, the world is seeing it very clearly. India uses the chaos to practice and elevate its international standing. Pakistan is dragged into a geopolitical trap, bound to a war machine. China plays the role of the spoiler, doing everything it can to prevent Pakistan from succeeding. Trump promotes a ceasefire through diplomacy, while China uses its proxy to create divisions. What we're witnessing today is not an India-Pakistan ceasefire agreement, but the first shot in the geopolitical confrontation between China and the US. More than a border skirmish between two neighbors, this is a test clash between two major systems vying for control over the future world order. So what do you think? Do you think this India-Pakistan conflict is a random event? Or is it part of China's premeditated scheme, using its proxy to spark the conflict? Do you think India really has the capacity to replace China as the global manufacturing hub? Or will this turmoil cause foreign investors to prioritize safety in their decisions? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification. If you enjoy deep dives into geopolitics, military mishaps, and global supply chain analysis, make sure to share.